not New Year's resolutions, but you've handed me a list of things that you want to emphasize in 2011 for your office. I guess some goals that you're trying to set.
Well, what we try to do is do New Year goals is exactly right. These are objectives for the year, and I do that every year the last week of the previous year. So I've done this past week, and I do it every year, and I'm pretty good at sticking to it.
Well, you started off here with victims. You're talking about crime care and forgotten people. What do you mean by that, and what are you going to try to do in 2011? I know that you put forth effort throughout the years. You know, your office has been really proactive with victims' rights and victim care. So what are you going to try to do different in 2011?
Crime victims are far too often the forgotten people. You've said it before in these homicide cases where the defendants are sitting over at that table breathing and begging for mercy, and they're a live person in the courtroom that the jury can see. And we can't see the victims in these cases, and we have to put a picture in and of the dead victim and that sort of thing. And we just have to put crime victims on an even or better level on this thing, so that they're not so much the forgotten people. And we're going to do that now. This crime care is something I've talked to you a little bit about, and it's something that I've asked you to become involved in this coming year, and you've indicated that you're interested because victims have been a big issue for you too. Let me give you an example. We get a witness that recently, in the Whitcomb case, we had a witness from Cincinnati, and she came down here and she's got zero money, zero anything, and so we have to bring her down here to testify, and we have to put her up, and we have to feed her, and we have to, get her transported. So somebody's got to pay for that, and more times than not, I end up paying for it because some of the expenses can be paid through the court system, but most can't. And this is a sort of an area that we've got to have some access to dollars that allow us to deal with crime victims. Let me tell you something else. You've been to homicide scenes as a homicide detective, and if it's a bloody scene where somebody's been beaten to death in somebody's residence, guess what? They go to the coroner's office, they go to the med center and all of that, then ultimately they're taken home, or they go home, and what do they see? They go in there and they've got this bloody, disheveled house that they have to personally clean up. Mm-hmm. Well, we want to create something of a team, or provide a service for those people that will help clean up the aftermath of homicide. Homicide victims got enough to deal with. They shouldn't have to relive it as they're scrubbing a floor or getting a carpet cleaned or that kind of stuff. And so
that's the kind of thing that you don't want anyone who was a friend of the victim or a family member to have to deal with. But you're right. If someone murders someone that you love in your house, guess what? Grab a mop and a bucket, because right now there's no one except
all
family.
on you.
Yeah, and that is a great idea.
Well, there are just any number of things that we can do with this, and Mary Lynn Houlihan is we're going to create a 501c3 nonprofit organization that will allow us to collect dollars to provide these services and training for people, and who knows, they may come up with going to court and watching what happens, court watch kind of thing, see what happens. That's been suggested to us by citizens, and it's a good idea.
Repeat offenders, these are the 6% that are committing 80% of the crimes. We talk about them all year, and you're going to, I guess, reestablish your goal here of prosecuting these people, getting them the longest sentences they can, and you're also talking about pushing for the GPS monitoring.
Well, since 1996, we've prosecuted about 3,800 what we call persistent felony offenders, career criminals, repeat offenders, whatever you want to call them. That group has committed and been convicted of about 50,000 crimes. That's misdemeanors and felonies, but that's 50,000 crimes. That's about 13 and a half each. So, and when we prosecute them, we get an average of 7.2 years on a sentence. Now, unfortunately, a lot of them are probated, but those are the sentences we get. So we want to push to get these people sent to prison. Now, one of the things let me give you a little New York City statistic. They did a study on why offenders are rearrested after serving prison time. They found that offenders with prior criminal justice involvement are far more likely to recidivate, commit more crimes than offenders without involvement. Excuse me. They also found that the people that are sent to prison are not deterred from committing more crimes. These people are a serious threat to the safety of communities everywhere, and the public is entitled to be protected from these guys. Now, here's the question I get, Officer Don. Well, do you believe in rehabilitation? And I said, sure. I hope that people that go to jail or prison are rehabilitated. When they get out, they decide to become contributing members of our community. But some don't. Now,
most don't. Statistically, right?
Yeah, the public, I don't pay so much attention to the bad guys in this kind of a situation when they're these kind of repeat offenders. I'm more interested in protecting the public from these slugs. And the public is entitled. And the way we do that in America is incarcerate them. We know two things about these guys. When they're on the street, they commit crime after crime. When they're incarcerated, they don't. And the public's entitled to that. You know, we pay a lot of taxes and to feel safe, to be protected from these kind of people. And hell, if we can't get our money's worth, then we ought to get our money back.
Well, the issue is it rehabilitation or punishment? And you know, there's a fine line there. Punishment first, and then everyone has the opportunity to be rehabilitated. You know, you can't change people. People have to make that decision.
You can change some. That's right.
No, they have to make that decision, though. Just like they made the decision to commit the crime that put them there, all of us individually have to decide to stop doing whatever we're doing. And you can't make someone stop smoking. You bring all the prosecutors from the federal government, along with prosecutors from your office, and you bring ICE, and you bring the FBI and ATF and the local police, and they all sit together, they look at a case, and based on the merits of that case, they make a decision as to who best can prosecute that. In other words, who can hammer the person. For instance, you know, sometimes the state can actually get a person more time if we prosecute under state law. More often than not, the federal system will give them more time. And we even take into consideration the length that the person would have to serve. If you get 5 years of federal time, you have to serve 85% of it. 5 years of state time, depending on the crime, may only mean 15%. So all that is taken into consideration before we take a case with ceasefire. And it has been remarkable, especially about a year into that program, when word got out on the street that you could be facing federal time for things that before, and we've only got about 30 seconds, but I'll never forget the guy that had the he had a charge of carrying concealed deadly weapon, which is like a fine.
It's a misdemeanor.
A misdemeanor. But by the time they got to ceasefire, the guy was looking at 5 years in prison.